Happy Wednesday, Sullivan friends and family. We made it to the middle of May, the kickoff of summer for those that are in college. So congratulations for those of you that have made it through the fall semester. It was a bit of a rocky, uncertain, kind of unique experience, but you made it through. Hopefully the summer provides a little bit more stability. And congratulations to all of our seniors out there who have graduated from college. We will be sharing a bunch of blog posts and social media articles and newsletters about some of the Sullivan Award winners in our network. So one of the things that we do in addition to these videos and some of the programs and retreats that you might have been to is we actually award graduating seniors that have really committed to service in their community. And so we want to thank them, to honor them, and appreciate a little bit of the work that they've been doing over the years. So congratulations if you are a Sullivan Award winner. We're excited to have you welcome into that part of our Sullivan community. Today, we've got potentially two friends joining us, Brandi and Erin. Erin is with an organization called Cul-de-sac, and her and I have known each other from a couple different projects over the years, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And Brandi, assuming her internet is working, because we had a little bit of a challenge earlier, there was a sandstorm that impacted her internet connection because Brandi is in Morocco, has been running a couple different social enterprises over the last couple of years. Her and I met at a previous Ignite retreat, and so we will try to check in with Brandi, and hopefully internet is working well at that point. So that's a bit of our game plan for today. As we're waiting for folks to join on the call, again, feel free to drop questions and comments down in the comment section below, and we will pass those on to both Erin and Brandi as we go. One of the quotes that has been floating literally on my desk, but also in my head recently, which I think might help frame a bit of our conversation for today, is life isn't about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself. And that quote has just been kind of stewing in the back of my mind for a little bit. Brandi and Erin are two people that I really look up to and admire in the ability to actually create the conditions and the reality for themselves, right? They're really good about putting themselves out in situations and creating a really neat reality for themselves, whether that's finding work, starting projects, starting ventures. They very much are creators, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So again, questions, feel free to drop them down below, but to kind of kick things off today, we're going to invite Erin on with us. I believe she is in Phoenix, but she can correct me once I bring her on here, and recently is involved in an organization called Cul-de-sac. Prior to that, Erin was involved in Ashoka U and probably a whole bunch of other things that I'm not overly familiar with. So she also is involved in Watson Institute, which for those who were on the conversation with Bryn a couple weeks ago, we talked a little bit about what Watson is up to out in Boulder and down in Florida. And so Erin has her hands involved in lots of creative sectors of the economy, the creative economy. So without further ado, let's bring Erin on here. So we will see if that goes through on your end. Welcome to folks that are just joining the call. Send a little waves to everybody.
Hi there.
I see a face. That's
I know, and I'm trying to figure out how to get it far enough away, close enough, but I think this works.
You're on. You made it work. So I love.
Good to see you.
You too. I don't know the last time we've had a chance to catch up, but I like using these as an excuse to catch up with friends in my world and see what they're up to.
Absolutely, and I love that you mentioned our Ashoka U connection, Spud, because that's also when I learned about the Sullivan Foundation.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep. So, as you know, Ashoka U has worked with hundreds of universities across the country, and that's when we got to learn about the amazing work of the Sullivan Foundation, being just one of the leaders in that region for bringing social entrepreneurship to young entrepreneurs. So excited to be on the call.
Our world constantly cycles back, and I think we keep revisiting very old connections that we've had. So cool. Well, thank you for joining. Thank you for jumping on Instagram Live.
My pleasure.
So we've been using these calls just to pick the brains of people that we think are doing really good work in the world about how they are navigating everything that's going on with COVID and all of the uncertainties and unknowns that kind of come with that. So I was wondering if you could just share a little bit of what you're up to at this given moment in time, right? You are always someone with lots of projects on your plate. So yeah, what has the last couple months looked like up until now and how you're navigating things?
Absolutely. So starting in January, I started working on a new project, which is a startup called Cul-de-sac, which thanks for putting that in the Instagram Live intro. So I would encourage everyone here to check out we have a really great Cul-de-sac Instagram link. We also have a really great, there it is, check it out. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, and our CEO, Ryan Johnson, also has like really great tweets going out. But it will be the first ever car-free neighborhood built from scratch in the US. And you're correct, it's in the Phoenix area. So I'm here in Phoenix, but it will be in Tempe, Arizona, where Arizona State University is based.
Ah, very cool. So I think one of the curiosities that a lot of people in our network have is how do you find opportunities like this, right? Everybody wants to get involved in cool projects, and you have a knack for just putting yourself in the right world where these projects kind of bubble up. I'm just curious what that has looked like for you. Like, how do you navigate that process of being in the right spot at the right time, or is it a whole matter of luck?
But it's a little bit of both. I love that question. But I would say for everyone on this call, constant curiosity, and then a willingness to jump in and learn about things and to see where your curiosity and love for working hard with great people will take you. So like and then also following great people on social media. I told you today I'm not great on social media, but I'll give a couple examples of how Cul-de-sac came into my life. So first, I moved to the Phoenix area. And through Ashoka U, I had worked with Arizona State University. So Spud, you're great at this in terms of keeping in touch with your network. So that would be my first tip in terms of how do you stay in touch with your network. As soon as I got into town, I reached out to my ASU friends and they connected me to then how can you get them to introduce you to 1 to 2 people who are working in something you're interested in. So I then got connected with this amazing guy, Rick Hall, who is the director of health innovation at ASU. Anyhow, then I helped him with a conference. He's like, Erin, I've got a conference going on. Can you help me? I was like, absolutely. So I think maybe tip 2 is like always be willing to kind of jump in and help if you feel like, especially if you're growing your network and learning about a new area. And then it was through that interaction with him that he then nominated me for a fellowship because I did great work. And so I think maybe that's a third tip. So first is like keep your network live. Second is like dive in and grow your network. But then the third is like whenever you do volunteer your time, just pretend like it's the last job you'll ever have in terms of the great work that you do. So Spud, I think I take great pride in doing great work. And because of that, it just opened up this whole other opportunity for a fellowship that I wouldn't have ever dreamed of being nominated for. And in that fellowship, I could propose any kind of idea that I would want to improve society. And so then I became fascinated being here in the Phoenix area by how to build intergenerational communities. Because if people have been to the Phoenix area, there's a lot of retirees here. And I thought it was bizarre that there's all these 55 and up neighborhoods. And I was like, why aren't people like living together? And I looked at demographic trends and we're going to be aging. And now in a post-COVID world, you can imagine just how we're living together and connecting across generations is even that much more important. And in doing that, the final, stage is maybe like paying attention to social media, because then we found out, the co-founder of Reddit, who is one of the executives at a company called Initialized Capital, which is a venture capital firm, sent out a tweet, and my husband follows him on social media, so that I just got lucky. So this is Alexis Ohanian, but Alexis Ohanian also is a great guy to follow. He's married to Serena Williams. For those of you out there, that's how I knew him. I was like, oh, I know Serena, but Alexis is also pretty cool. And anyhow, he was funding through his venture capital firm this really cool company called Cul-de-sac. And so I said, and they're building the first ever car-free neighborhood built from scratch here in Phoenix. And I said, well, that sounds like a really great way to build an intergenerational neighborhood. And so, and then the final tip, tip 5 would be don't be scared to reach out. If something is all of a sudden out there that immediately captures your imagination, is exactly what you want to do. So tap your network. So it goes back to, once again, full circle, it goes back to step 1, go back to your network. And so I had someone who knew the CEO actually at Cul-de-sac through my LinkedIn network. I got an intro, I had a conversation, and then I told him I read all of his articles before our first call. So do your homework before you do a cold call with anyone ever. And so from his articles, I read that he had said he did hundreds of hiring interviews previously, and he was a big believer in the work trial. Like, can you trial a job before you get hired?
Yeah.
And so I pitched to him on the call. I said, hey, I've got this fellowship. I'd like to do it at cul-de-sac. And I read in your article that you're a big fan of the work trial. Would you consider doing that with me? And he said, let's do it. And here we are. And now I've just accepted a full-time offer to work with the company just about a month ago.
Wow, congrats. Cul-de-sac has popped up on my radar in a couple different ways, and so it figures that you're sort of throwing yourself in the middle of that. But I think it's ironic that you talked about network building as like find the one person that you know that might have a foot in the door somewhere, and then have them introduce you to two people, and then them introduce to two. It's very similar to a virus spreading, right? It's like
there you go. Yeah.
I don't know what the actual science term.
It's like the positive side of it.
But I mean, we've been talking a lot, at least on these calls, about how at this time it's so much easier to reach out to people because everybody is like incredibly receptive to like, yeah, I'll jump on a call with you this afternoon. And so it's like, I think a lot, and especially graduation just happened for a lot of college students, or the semester came to an end, and so a lot of folks are like, man, my internship's gone, or I'm left with like totally not knowing how to navigate. And it's like, you're actually at a really interesting opportunity to be able to like jump into a space where people are receptive to cold calls, right? You can kind of these like work trials of like, hey, I've got time on my hand. Like, can I just like jump in and help in whatever capacity I can? So I think it's obviously a difficult stage for people right now, but if there's a creative way to spin it in some capacity.
Absolutely. And I'd say that there are a lot of companies out there, startup social enterprises, that are pivoting to be able to provide really crucial support during this COVID time, that are creative kind of projects that they need help with. And so I'd say there's also really an openness, whereas, some companies are clearly downshifting and having to shift priorities. There are plenty that are on the upswing, and that could really use some creative ideas and people willing to pitch in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to dive into communities with you, because I love, like, community is the heart of everything I do. All of the ventures, I'm based in Pennsylvania, that's kind of what I work on. So I'm just curious, what are you exploring? What are you thinking about? What's like stuck in your head that you can't get out when it comes to the purpose and role of community, especially when we're all isolated right now? Like, I don't know, that just is a fascinating question mark to explore, I think.
Oh, Spud, I'm so glad you asked, because I talk about you on almost every other call, and there's some folks that I want to introduce you to, because I've also been thinking and learning a lot about placemaking and community. So like,
yes.
What is placemaking and urban design? It's about creating kind of a sticky environment that's like really beautiful, that is co-created by people, that's a really active and activated space where you want to go there. So it's the difference between like an empty main street and a bustling main street. And what's that key difference? But I think there's a huge opportunity that people are looking for connection. And so, for example, we're not opening. Cul-de-sac is currently under demolition. We're going to start building this summer. But we're like, why not start building community now? Because this is the time when people really need it. So we've actually just put out there, and this is where I think getting your creative ideas out there to attract the community. So for people who love this idea of car-free, like, oh, car-free, right now, many of us are living without our cars in COVID. Like, what would our neighborhoods look like if we didn't have cars? If people love this idea of what would it look like to have vibrant neighborhoods that integrate Uber, Lyft, scooters, bicycles to get to where you need to go, rather than just taking your single car to where you need to go. So it's like asking all these questions, and then also featuring other people in that community. So it's like talking about some key points of questions, but then we're also like highlighting a broader network. And so, for example, we're about to be posting on Cul-de-sac probably today, if you guys keep an eye on the Instagram, a map of 20 other cities that have closed down streets during COVID for bicycling and walking, so that people can keep social distance. And we are going to highlight those and actually open source all of the agreements that we did with the city of Tempe to say, what would it take to keep them permanently closed? So how can you take an idea, highlight it, and take it one step further? But I guess the other part of community, though, kind of coming back to where I started in terms of how can we start building community now, since we've now attracted this like-minded group of people who are like, we want to be part of Cul-de-sac as an idea, and potentially, yeah, sure, to live there. We've started a wait list and said, join us. And so actually this Thursday, tomorrow, we're going to do our first ever kind of future resident happy hour with the
Cool.
architect behind cul-de-sac to introduce the residents to each other and to start building that community now, even before we build the physical space. So that, and then there's even buildings that are unfinished yet in terms of how we're thinking about the programming. Like, for example, we're rethinking our retail program. What will that look like? We're rethinking our gym and starting to get input from residents now, so that that placemaking, that collaborative process of creating this space starts with folks who have come to us. And we've done really diverse outreach. So I'm really proud to say that it is a very intergenerational group of folks who have already been attracted.
That's awesome. A lot of buzzwords get thrown around in this space, but for folks who are not familiar with the term placemaking, go Google that after this. It's personally one of the things I love. I have it sitting on my desk. So I'm working on a new toolkit right now on
Of course you are.
do creative placemaking and build communities from the ground up. So anyway, this is what I've been working
But
on.
let's talk about that.
And well, so the framework, and you kind of touched upon it, but the framework we've been using, and actually you and I were involved with the TFA work, and they kind of talked about this, but like prototype project. So it's like probe the community or the people that you want to be working with, like really get a sense of what do they care about right now, and then based on that, do a really quick, dirty prototype, right? You don't have to wait until you build a massive neighborhood, right? Like that, that's the project stage. That comes later. And so, yeah, that's been like, that framework has been really important to me. One of the things that has been interesting, because you mentioned, cities that are closing down streets right now and turning them into, car-free areas. We, in my community, State College, and we're, a small university town, 100,000 people, half students, half community members. We have been trying for decades to close down our main street and turn it into like a pedestrian walkway. And it is the most contentious thing in our community. I mean, people fight. I mean, it is like heated in the comment section. Anyway, we just, probably 2 weeks before COVID hit, we got approval to shut it down for like a trial. And then because COVID hit, everybody like resorted back as like, nope, we can't do the trial. Like, let's put all the funding. They raised like probably, I don't know, $200,000 or something to actually like properly do this as a prototype. And now they're like completely ignoring it. They shelved all the funding. And I'm just sitting here as like,
oh, but I'll send you all the resources so that you can get benchmarks of other cities. I'll connect you with a guy in Boston who's been really pushing this forward. So I'll give you the resources you need to go back to your city.
Yes, it's like, I'm like, man, do I pick this battle to run with? But boy, it's dear to my heart. So
yeah, because really now is the time. It's like I'll have to share with you all, there's an article that a friend of mine wrote showing just the amount of space that's on a street versus the amount of space that's on a sidewalk. If we do need to continue to have 6-foot separation between folks, you just don't have that room on a sidewalk.
Well, I think your mic might have.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Yep. Yep. So there's just basically not that amount of space on a sidewalk that you need, that it actually does need to stretch out into the streets to be able to have that social distancing parameter. Or if you can imagine, so many restaurants that are now opening are really going to struggle if they don't have some of that sidewalk space plus for outdoor seating.
So are you familiar, this is me now connecting you to two dots in my world, the Better Block folks down in Dallas, Texas?
No.
Oh, good. You're going to go Google them after this call. So Better Block is all about, making placemaking way easier for people to do on their own. And it's all about designing a better block. And so they just released this, it's like an outdoor seating extension for a restaurant that goes out into like a parking spot, but it allows for having 6 feet of separation between all the eaters, and you still have, your flow on the sidewalk. And so they're trying to figure out, how can we open source design so that anybody can go, basically do a big 3D print of this using a CNC router. So they just released that last week. They've been doing all kinds of cool placemaking stuff of like helping restaurants create, pop-up drive-throughs to be able to help with that type of thing. So they're doing all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, Better Block, Better
Block. And so anyone who's watching and picking up on this sees Bud and I are already doing this. I'm going to connect him with a guy with, have you been in touch with Patronicity?
No.
Okay, so that's who I'm going to connect you with, and you'll connect me with Better Block, and this is how it happens, people.
It really, honestly, and for me, one of the things that has been interesting, and I don't know how you're experiencing this, but with suddenly everybody working from home, like I work from home on a regular basis, so this isn't overly new for me, but I'm used to having calls like this on a regular basis and just like sharing resources back and forth.
Yeah.
And instead, what I'm seeing is people that are now working from home, there's this like expectation that I have to be on Zoom 24/7, and people are sort of like looking over my shoulders, watching what I'm doing. It's kind of like the bad parts of in-person working culture are sort of like trickling in. And so like I'm like getting, stressed out being on all these Zoom calls when it's like something like this is like, hey, I just want to jump on a call, hear what you're up to, share resources. Like that's way more life-giving. And I think that can happen in way more naturally when you're working from home because you're forced to connect with people that are not in your immediate vicinity.
Absolutely. And you can just call it like a virtual coffee or something like that, because I think it really is important as you're growing the people that you're learning from, the people that you're connecting with, to like go out and have coffee. And so this is just a way to do it virtually.
I do virtual hikes. About 2 years ago, I went and I live in an area where there's a lot of like wooded area. And so I mapped out where the cell phone service is really strong in the woods. And so now I know when I can do like a live video call out in the woods and I'm not going to lose my internet connection.
I love that. Walk and talks is one of my favorites. So Spud, anytime you can call me for a walk and talk.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, other things right outside of the cul-de-sac world. I know we've been kind of drilling into that a little bit. But what are some of the other things, because you strike me as someone that doesn't 100% of your energy goes to one thing. So what are some of the other things that are, maybe they have possibility or you're just doing them to stay fresh? I mean, like, what are other things on your plate at the moment?
Sure. And I mean, I have to say I am diving into cul-de-sac very intensely. So that has been really fun because I am a person who does like bounce around and do lots of things. So it has been fun to kind of dive really heavily into one project. However, as you know, I am on the three nonprofit boards. And so I would say that those have been areas of just a lot of growth and learning. So you mentioned Watson, where I'm so glad that everyone got to meet Brandi. She's incredible. So I'm on the board of Watson Institute, and that's quite exciting because not only do they have the incubator program in Boulder, the degree program in Florida, but we're also launching a program in Guatemala.
Awesome.
And so I've been very involved in that. I've been very involved in both the expansion to Guatemala, and we're also looking at Mexico. So that has been something I've been working on. The second nonprofit is the Amani Institute, which is basically a post-grad certificate program. So anyone on this program that is looking for more, it has an inner journey kind of component and then like a hard skills component for social enterprise and social innovation. And they are based in Brazil, Kenya, and India. And so it has been a pretty big shift for them because it's very much a travel-based program where people travel to either Brazil, India, or Kenya. And so it's been a lot of rethinking in the COVID area. How do you change a travel-based program and really take some things online, experiment? And so we've been diving into that. And then the final one, I think also the Sullivan folks know Tessa from Asset.
Oh yeah, she was on here. She was one of our first calls. I think we had a while
Amazing. Back. So, it's a small world. And anyhow, I'm on Tessa's board. And so Asset's been, you all heard from her, really amazing at this time. They've launched a whole Instagram campaign with young people sharing their stress and anxiety tools. And so also been very involved in helping, supporting her as she's getting that campaign off the ground.
Yeah, I think she jumped on right as they were about to make that kind of pitch. So it was very, very early on. So, and I think that's one of the things we try to frame, at least in the Sullivan community, is right. You mentioned this is a small world out there. Like the social innovation community is actually fairly well connected. And so for those in the Sullivan community, if you're looking for your open door, consider Sullivan an open door, right? Reach out to myself, reach out to Erin. Like there's your first person inside the door, and they will get you connected into this very small world very, very quickly. So, or Tessa or Bryn or any of the others that, we've jumped off here.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you about a favorite app that I've been using.
Ooh, yeah. Share fun tools.
So I think you might know that I have a background as a competitive weightlifter. Or maybe you don't know that.
I did know that, but I totally forgot.
So I think it's really important to be playful. And it's been really hard because I'm used to going to the gym and lifting heavy weights. And I have like reformatted my garage with the tools that I have, but all the exercise equipment is all sold out. So the Future app is an app that like will place you with a coach who will then give you your own daily workout. And then they actually speak into your ears about like, hey, Erin, because he knows like what I want to do. I'm working on my pull-ups. So I'm like been working on a pull-up goal. And so I'm at 7. I'm working towards 10.
Wow.
Which I'm really excited about. And
what's it called? The Future app?
The Future app.
The Future app. Interesting. Just jotted it down.
But I think having I have some people in my life right now who are working on handstand goals. So I think there's some great body weight stuff that you can do in a time of COVID.
Absolutely. I actually, it was Mother's Day recently, and I almost got I was between two things, but the one that I did not choose, which maybe I'm regretting now, was a personal workout with a Cirque du Soleil like acrobat.
That's amazing.
Sounds so cool. So yeah, it's on Airbnb. It's like one of their online experiences, another company that has to sort of pivot. So instead we did a coffee chat with a Cirque du Soleil producer for her, which I felt was a little less strenuous. I wasn't sure what headspace she might be in, but anyway, I think working out, finding a new routine is important. So
it is, but actually it does remind me of one last thing whenever you mentioned Airbnb, because I do have a dear friend that I was partnering with at Airbnb for a project I was working on before cul-de-sac. So I'm a little less involved right now, but I'd highly recommend it to this group. It's called Changex. And so changex.org, they're based in Ireland. It's a colleague I'd worked with previously at Ashoka in Ireland, who launched a whole new program that's, it's basically what are homegrown ideas for change making that you can do in your own backyard. And so they're all bite-sized social innovation ideas that are completely open source on their website. They all have a social innovator who led them and grew them, but then they're using the platform to scale them, and anyone can implement them in their own backyard. So actually I we did a partnership with Microsoft in Phoenix. So this was like at the end of last year that I helped with. And that included community gardens, open orchard ideas. There's one that I love that's called Cycling Without Age. That's actually taking, you probably know this. And so they started in the Netherlands, but it's where you take out a little bicycle that has like a basket essentially to take out older folks for bicycle rides. And so all of these are on their websites with how-to guides and kits on how to do them, completely free and open to the public. And so you can just take the idea and run with it, but they also have cycles with partners like Microsoft who give grants. So you can keep an eye on there because there are ways to get funding to actually start these in your own neighborhood.
Changex, I'm pulling it up right now here.
Changex.org, there it is.
That one, awesome.
That's it.
Very cool. There's another, I feel like I just sent a link to actually the president of Sullivan Foundation about this like 24 hours ago. I'm not exactly sure what I sent him, so I need to go dig that up. But
if you did, I worked with them for about 6 months on the project here in Phoenix and love the team. They're totally incredible. So, and I think it would be really great for the Sullivan Network because it's like a whole bank of over 150 ideas that can be implemented by anyone, anywhere.
Very cool. Well, most importantly, at cul-de-sac, are you going to have those fun bucket bikes? Is that part of the design?
Oh my gosh, we have so many micro mobility ideas. It's crazy. So awesome. I hope so. That will be among many of the bicycles that we'll have at cul-de-sac for sure.
I don't know. So do you know I own something called an Elf? Have you heard of these at all?
No.
It's a, here's another, man, this is just nothing but
I hope someone's taking notes to remind us.
Don't worry, we'll share this on YouTube with all the links later. So Elf is actually from Durham, North Carolina. We visited them at a Sullivan field trip 2 or 3 years ago. But it's a solar-powered velomobile. And so it has 2 seats in it. It's kind of like a tricycle. So 2 wheels in the front, 1 in the back. And so I got it for me and most importantly, my dog in the back. People never know. He's always behind me on these calls. So I was sick of having to drive everywhere because I couldn't bring him wherever I went, but he always comes to work. So anyway, so he sits in the back seat, I sit in the front. And then there's an area for like groceries in the back, but it's completely solar, electric powered. It goes like 30 miles an hour. This like cool little thing. It's awesome. I mean,
yeah, you definitely have to share that with us.
Yes, I will. I won't go down in my garage right now, but that's where it's at. But yes, go check out Elf. I think they're still up and running. I have no idea what they're up to, but anyway, there's cool
Amazing.
car-free alternatives out there. So
There are, for sure.
fun.
Well,
Well,
Spud,
yes,
better
I
get
want
on
to
to
be
the next
mindful of
ordeal. I
time.
hope Brandi can join us.
Yes. So yeah, we will try to have her join on here next. But if there's one final piece of advice or a tip or something, I mean, we've basically been talking about this the entire time, but I always like to end the conversation on this. Like one thing that you would share with the Sullivan Network that you think they should go check out or that they could rally around to help you, what would that thing be?
It's just, I think the broader context of the pandemic, it can be just a huge time of uncertainty. And I like to flip that as sometimes uncertainty is the best time for play. To basically see play is not really an activity, it's a state of mind. And so I would say that's about all the really kind things you said about me, the way I live my life, I like to think of the core value is actually having that playful frame of mind.
I think your mic just, no
having that playful frame of mind.
Yes.
That is, when things seem scary or uncertain, or I don't know what step to take next, and I've definitely been there before. Like I said, even that step that I mentioned earlier in this call, to reach out to this professor here locally. I was new to the area. I wasn't working on anything yet here locally, and I just didn't know where to start. So I just started having fun with it and reaching out to people I knew, found great people, worked on a great project. And so don't let the perfect project keep you from diving in and having some fun and having a playful project, because you never know where it's going to lead you.
Totally. For folks who have checked out my personal website, I have a whole bucket to just playful things that have no purpose beyond, I just have fun with them. And I think that is super critical. So I'm actually really glad that you shared that piece. So cool.
Your dog agrees.
Yeah, he's getting excited to walk.
To go play.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for joining.
Thanks so much,
again. Yeah, cul-de-sac. If you haven't, go check them out afterwards, and go just Google all the other cool things that Erin and I have been chatting about. There is a full list there. So, but Erin, thank you for taking time. Thanks for navigating Instagram Live with us. I'm glad it worked out.
Me too. Bye, Spud.
Cool.
Thanks.
See you,
Bye,
friend.
Sullivan.
Ciao, ciao. All right, so that was Erin. Again, Erin is just a lovely human being, up to really good work. So thank you for joining along. We're going to see real quick if Brandi might be around. I'm not sure. Her internet was having some trouble. So let's real quick double check. Nope, it looks like she is still dealing with a sandstorm in Morocco. So nothing like a good cliffhanger. We will bring Brandi back onto the call probably tomorrow or Friday. Stay tuned, follow us online. We'll let you know what's going on. But again, we do these calls on a regular basis. So if you've got questions or comments or people that you want to hear us interview and chat with, send us a link and we will go out and do the cold call for you. So thanks for tuning in, friends. Have a good rest of your week and we will chat later. See ya. So we've got Brandi from Remote Ramblers here with us. We have had to navigate quite a bit of uncertainty on our own. We tried to get her on Instagram Live, but there was a sandstorm, and now there were some technology issues. So we are here. We're jumping onto Zoom to make this conversation happen. So thanks for tuning in. And if you've got questions, feel free to drop them down in the comment section below. Here's my conversation with Brandi. We're good. We are here. We are live. For those who are patiently tuning in with us as we've popped from Instagram to Facebook to Zoom to Facebook, thank you for your patience. This is a classic way to kind of end out a week of these calls. I think this is just symbolic of the last couple months for many of us. So Brandi, thank you for joining. Super pumped that you are here with us. I'm very excited to catch up because I haven't had a chance to actually jump on a call with you for, I don't even know how long now. It has been a while. So anyway, thanks for making time in Morocco. So to kick things off, share a little bit with us of what you've been up to. I know you've had all kinds of fun pivots over the last couple of years. And so I'm excited to hear what a little snippet of your journey has been up until this moment.
Okay, so my name is Brandi, and I am the owner of several different businesses. And I've been living in Morocco. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and I have been living in Morocco for 6 years now. I actually ended up in Morocco in a very funny happenstance when I opened a business here before I ever actually lived here. And now I own multiple businesses here. So For me, there are some entrepreneurs that are very focused, right? They have that one thing that they love and are crazy passionate about, and they just run after it. And I am somewhat jealous of those people because
Same
I feel
here.
like maybe if I loved one thing, it would be easier in a way, but that's just not me. Um, I love everything, and I love in like a million different directions. And so for me, the businesses I own are very diverse because that is who I am. So I own a artisan business which produces leather goods, and we do mostly accessories and things like that. All of my businesses are social enterprises, so they are ethically based. We care about fair wages. We care about people. I do businesses because I care about people, and so they all have that grounding, but then everything that I actually do is different. So I have the leather business. We also have a food truck. We do Mexican food on a little like motorcycle kitchen here in Marrakesh. I'm also a makeup artist, and I help with events at times and just all kinds of different things, mostly centered around design and artisan goods and handmade creations. So, in a nutshell, I I like to have my hands in a lot of things, which keeps my life really interesting.
I feel like you're a kindred spirit in that sense because everybody's always trying to ask me, "What do you do, Spud?" It's like, I don't know. Pick which of the buckets you want to dive into. It's like, you want to talk about, yeah, food
About today.
trucks? Cool, we'll go talk about food trucks. I don't have a food truck business, but I should add that to my list.
Yet, you don't.
So, and I feel like, so I want to kind of anchor this back to at least one of the memories that I have with you, and in the Sullivan context. So you and I met at an Ignite retreat, or I don't know what it was. It may not have been called Ignite at that point. I don't remember.
I think it was.
Was it? Okay. I can't remember what year it was, but I remember, was it, what year?
2010, 2011.
I was going to say 2011, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we did, I don't know if you remember this, it's a memory that sticks in my mind, maybe not yours as much, but we did an activity, Try and a Hustle, where it was like envision yourself in 10 years. Do you remember this activity?
You mean how I ended up in Morocco?
Yes, maybe you could. So let me give a little context to the activity, and maybe you can share your story, because whether you know it or not, I share at least my version of your story fairly often with people. So I'm curious to hear it from your mouth. But the activity, right, is like, imagine what your life might look like 10 years from now if you were doing the work that you were put on this world to do, right? Like you're in your hustle zone, try that on for size. And then we do kind of like a live role play 10-year reunion, people pretending like they are their 10-year-old self. And what does it look like to actually, speak that into existence? So that's the activity. Give us a little glimpse of what that was like for you and how that influenced where you're at now. You're in Morocco. You have kind of a fun journey in terms of how you got there, I think.
Yeah, this exercise has been incredibly impactful for me. And honestly, I still do this exercise with people because it was so powerful for me. So essentially, like you said, you imagine what your day looks like, right? Where do you wake up? What do you see when you wake up? What do you smell? What do you taste? Like, who's around you? Um, and weirdly, I imagined what my life kind of looks like now. um,
We're at the 10-year mark almost. That's
we're
the
here.
ironic part of this conversation.
It really is. So I imagined essentially that I would be living in a building that I'm a very visual person that has tall ceilings and lots of light and was very like crisp but in a dirty sort of way. And that there was no real alarm clock, so there's no real time that I have to get up. And my day was kind of very casual, and I was wearing clothes that I didn't feel constricted in. And I kind of bounced around. There was no office, I did this thing and I did this thing. And I imagined that I would be creating leather handbags in Morocco, which I had never been to Morocco. And at this point, a lot of my design work was like woodcraft and building things, and not really with textiles or leather or anything like that. So this was a very new like medium for design expression for me, but it just felt so visceral. Like my response to it was like, yeah, yes, that's what I want to be doing. So during this like talk time afterwards, this I'm describing, and I was probably really excited, right? Because I get like super pumped. I'm like, oh my God, I'm living like this amazing life, and you need to hear about it. And this girl looks at me with like a dead expression, and she was like, well, why aren't you doing that? I was like, oh, I was like taken aback. I have a lot going on right now. But yeah, I kind of went home after that, and I was like, man, that life looked really cool. And I was like, can I make this happen? Like, is this something I could do? Like, could life look like this? And weirdly enough, I was going to be on the African continent, which, hear me out, Africa is a very big place, right? But I was going to be headed to this side of the world anyways. I was going to Uganda for grad school. And then I was supposed to be going to Dubai to try and help some friends afterwards. I was like, I could just stop in, I'll just stop into Morocco, see what it's like. And that's kind of it. um, so I stopped into Morocco, and 7 years later, here we are.
And what was your plan? Because people hear that story, and I'm inspired by it. I think others are inspired by it. But what was your plan prior to doing that? To putting that future self on? What was your next 10 years looking like before thinking through all that?
Yeah. So before I really got onto the Morocco thing, I still was like in a very sweet spot of international focus, more so than on health. So like water purification, sustainable design, things of that nature. And so really that's the path I was heading down, more of like a public health sort of way. I kind of done a lot of projects on water and sanitation and hygiene. And don't get me wrong, I still love that, and I'm very passionate about it, and I do see that entering my life again. But I was really tired. I don't know, for those of you out there who work in the social development realm, it can be really exhausting. And I was young. Like, I started doing this field when I was young, but I was really tired all the time of just dealing with sorrow. And I was trying to find ways to interject joy and happiness and find ways to be like, yes, this is where we are. How do we build? How do we get better? And when you're dealing with sanitation and health, you don't really have that development, like the getting better, right? You're always just addressing like immediate needs. And so for me, this was a way to still improve people's lives, but do it in a way that I could immediately see benefits, right? Which may sound selfish, but this this was more of a merging of the joy that I love with the development work that I really wanted to be doing.
Totally.
So yeah, I was
Michelle.
heading more of a science route, and then I went more of an art business route.
But I think one of the threads that at least I hear in your story and what you're currently doing when you describe you've got a lot of things going on is you're someone that naturally follows your curiosity in a really meaningful way, right? So you're not afraid to, wherever that curiosity goes, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to go to Morocco now. It's like, okay, I guess I'll follow it there. So Michelle, just to bring in some of the comments here, says your mind never stops, and that you had all your post-it notes down your hallway as your timeline, I guess. Which
Yeah,
I'm a big
I was
post-it
about
note
to say, my walls look much like yours.
fan. Yeah, I am equally a visual learner, so I can resonate with that. One of the things that I'm curious to kind of pick your brain on, because I think you might have some insight. Lots of people are right now in that bit of a sorrow space, right? There's just a lot of emotion weighing on people's shoulders.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think, no fault of their own, are folks that like pick one career path or one major or one thing, right? There's this expectation like follow your singular passion.
Yeah.
And go do everything in your life should be focused on that one thing, right? That frame of reference drives me nuts. And so I'm very much of a big belief of like, you should have multiple things, right? Diversify your curiosities and your passions and your interests. And so I'm just curious how that perspective, because you seem to be someone like that, allows you to navigate a time like COVID when there's a lot of emotion, a lot of sorrow, a lot of grief on people's shoulders. Like, how are you personally navigating that, given that you've got lots of different things that you're sort of juggling?
Yeah. I think whenever you asked me to do this, I was actually really nervous because I don't feel super entrepreneurial right now, right? Because a lot of like my businesses are kind of slow. It's just a lot of quiet. And for someone who is moving a lot, and I base my worth even sometimes on like my effectiveness to do things, um, or to produce. This time can be very, very difficult. Um, and I think that a lot of people are, struggling with finances, but also, it's hard when you're struggling with finances to dream about things you would love to be doing. So there's a few things for me. All throughout my entrepreneurial adventures, I have made sure to have a steady. So I do get concerned. I'm a human about money, right? We all get concerned about money and like being able to take care of ourselves and feed our families. And being an entrepreneur can be difficult, right? So for me, I make sure I have a steady, because if I don't have a steady, I can't be creative. So my steady has changed a few times, but right now I teach English online, and it's not, it's a job and it's a good job, but it's my steady. And my steady allows me the space mentally, emotionally, physically to be able to expand, right? And so for me right now, what I am trying to give myself the space to do is not produce, but to pursue. And what that looks like for me is I'm doing things that bring me joy. When I have nothing to do, I'm trying to find something that makes me happy. Is that coloring? Is that reading a book that isn't about education or sales funnels or marketing, like a book that I love? Or is that, researching construction methods with sustainable things, or trying to reach out to other entrepreneurs or artisans, so I'm only in this time instead of producing, trying to find things that bring me joy. Because for me, being an entrepreneur is about creating a life that you really love doing, right? Like, I want to do businesses that I like doing. I want to create things that make me happy. Because if you're spending a ton of time doing them, why would you create something that makes you sad? You know, like, so if there are things that you guys like to do, give your time to that right now, because it could be a business. You don't know that, but you don't know that it's not possible. So think about your days. Think about the time you want to wake up. Think about the clothes you want to have to wear every day. Think about the way you want to talk to people or not talk to people, or do you want your day to be filled with emails, or do you want to be walking around? Because that'll inform the type of business you create, and your businesses should make you happy.
Absolutely. For those, we've got a few people that have just jumped on the stream. We've got Brandi here from Remote Ramblers and XYZ dot dot dot, many other creative endeavors that she's got going on out in Morocco. And I think the piece that really resonates with me about that, Brandi, is this myth about the entrepreneur being someone who has a singular thing that they're chasing, and like night and day, that's all you think about, and you're creating pitch decks, and you're every conversation you're roping back into your thing. And it's like, that's never been my reality. And yet I sometimes feel this burden to fit into that persona, because that's what people think of when they think of an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur. And so I appreciate you peeling that back and actually sharing that it's okay to have multiple things, and to also feel like I'm not going to produce right now because I feel that, I mean, last week I crashed for a whole week. I did nothing. I just laid on the couch. I like Netflixed. That was it. And there was this like, man, am I supposed to share this part of my truth? But this is actually what I'm going through right now, right? It's like, I can't produce anymore right now. And yet that's the expectation that people have for me, is like, oh, Spud, he produces, he creates. It's like, well, that's not always the reality.
That's not how I feel right now.
Yeah. And being like, yeah.
I think that there are some people who are in the space where they can entrepreneur all the time, full time. And there are a lot of people that that's just not the reality for. And my first business I started when I was working full time and when I was a full time grad student. My entrepreneur stuff was whack, right? Like I was doing my best. And for most entrepreneurs, I think that that is reality, right? Like there is no one way to do this well, but I think that you really need to examine like what you want it to be for you. What does success for you look like? Is it the amount of money you make? And that is a dangerous setting to put against yourself. But is it, getting to spend more time with your families and creating something that lets you do that? And that's why I think this time is so precious. Some might say holy, because you really can prioritize what you want your life to look like, and how do you create something that lets you have this life that you imagine, and that is possible. So yeah, you don't have to be like an entrepreneur with like a nice suit. Right. I remember stressing about a suit jacket one day. I was like, my body just doesn't fit in a suit. And that is the most absurd thought I think I've ever had. But that, for me, is what entrepreneurs were.
Right.
And that has not matched up with my experience in any way. So yeah, you don't have to be one entrepreneur. It can fit you. And it should fit you, because you are building the business.
Right. Yeah, one of the things I think having that perspective allows you to think about your career in an entrepreneurial way, right? So this is kind of an ironic piece of like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs view their career in a very traditional way, right?
Mhm.
My 9 to 5, I work for the company. I do everything I do is focused on that thing. So it's like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur now, but I'm going to have the same mentality. I'm going to focus on my energy, da da da, right? So it's like when you think about your career in an entrepreneurial way, now like take it to the next meta level, you see opportunities to connect things that might not otherwise. One of the pieces that, and maybe you can touch on this a little bit, that I have appreciated watching your journey is the way that you manage to like sneak Peace Corps into your ability. Maybe, I don't know if this fits into your steady, but I love that steady idea, right? Like you've been really good at like creatively saying, wait, this thing or this organization or this experience could actually cover X, Y, and Z for me, which allows me to focus other energy over here. And I don't think a lot of people think that way. And so I wonder if you could like give us a little perspective on that of how you combine those.
Yeah, so the steady. So my first real steady when I was developing my first business was a refugee resettlement, which is a very intense steady. Usually you want your steadies to be easy things that pay you enough to be comfortable. Okay.
Right.
This was none of those things, but it did give me stability and it did give me good community and it did give me some sort of like basis
Hmm.
unknowingly for the community I wanted to be working with. So that was my first study.
Hmm.
Peace Corps was definitely a study for me. If you've had many conversations with me or any conversations with me, I am not a huge advocate for Peace Corps other than the fact that they give good people opportunities to potentially do good things. For me, they gave me the opportunity to be in the country I wanted to be in and learn the language that I wanted to be learning.
Right.
So I would have moved here anyways. I would have been learning Darija anyways, but Peace Corps does a very good job of language training. So Peace Corps gave me a really good foundation to be physically where I wanted to be, learn the language that I wanted to learn, immerse myself in a culture in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to do if I just kind of moved in as like an expat.
Mm.
Okay. Because usually when you move like an expat to a new community, you get kind of clicky. Okay.
Right.
Um, and that's not what I wanted out of Morocco. So yes, Peace Corps was definitely a study that gave me a base and allowed me to do work that then allowed me to be like, oh, but hey, I can make connections with artisans while I'm here. I can figure out how to deal with the government and the state and permits and all of these things, you know? So your study can be anything, but it's just meant to provide like a basic foundation that gives you the freedom headspace to do what you really want to be doing,
Mm.
right? Because my partner and I talk about this a lot. People who are stressed or worried or drained, you can't be creative. You can't dream. You are not your best self when you are constantly
Mm.
worried. Okay. So creating a safe foundation for yourself to then build is the whole foundation of why you need to study. Um, and if you guys want to talk about that, I would love to help you find something. um, so yeah, now, like I said, I have a different study and it allows me to work from home. I actually did another teaching job before the one I have now,
Mm.
and it wasn't a perfect fit. So really having a secure foundation that so that way when all the entrepreneur crazy stuff happens, you're like, I'm okay.
Right.
I'm
So
okay.
I wonder, and I'm kind of drilling into this idea of the steady because I think that's really great. You mentioned financially, you may need a steady for finances. You may need it for community. You may need it geographically to be based somewhere. What are some of the other components that you think of when you're like, okay, what in my life do I need a steady on? Does it typically fall into one of those categories or another category?
Yeah, but I think it could also be like reputation, right? Like if people don't know you in a new field that you're trying to get into, aligning yourself with an organization or a person or whatever that's already doing it and be like, hey, I'm here too, you know? And then people see that and they're like, oh, hey, you had a good idea the other day, you know? So it can be an individual, it could be an organization. Here in Morocco, it's very weird because you're known by your community. So me being able to say, oh, I lived in this small village here, they're like, oh, okay. Um, and so it, for me, it's been a lot about building community around an idea, or building a secure place where, you know, financially I felt okay, but then also just um, creating safe spaces for myself in any way that I could. So that way, when I tried to do something crazy, people are like, okay, we know her. Like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Um, so yeah, and we all need safe spaces in different ways. Some people have a financial situation where they really don't need a safe financial. Great. Some people don't have the community that they need to really build a business or a good social enterprise. So maybe you need to make connections with people in your network. You know, maybe it is that, you know, logistically you just don't speak a language, or you don't know accounting skills, or whatever it is. Maybe your study is seeking out those skills and learning them in a safe, non, you know, stressful environment, so that way then you can do the crazy things you want to do.
Totally. So I want to be mindful of time as well, but I am very curious about how you are using this time now in thinking 10 years down the road, right? So you and I met kind of around this like 10-year envisioning activity. So where, this is obviously a massive question, but like, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And what are you doing now, right? How are you using this time that COVID is giving us to think about that? Are there practices, routines, things that you are regularly doing that others might be able to adopt and kind of apply in their own lives?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming,
How did
Spud.
you know, right? Because I asked
and
everybody
I
this question.
and I'm only semi-prepared for it. But I think I'm getting old.
Amen.
And I and I think for me, I have been like a really wandery type of person, and that's good. I love it. It has really sat with me. But I think I am looking for a place to create, because I do have so many things I love to do. What I really love to do is create safe havens for people to be, right? And to feel. I like to be someone steady. Okay. So I think what I'm looking at is creating a place. And there's a lot of logistics that go into that, about where, and am I going to be in a beach or in a mountain or whatever. But creating a place, probably out of ecodomes, which is something I am spending a lot of time researching right now.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that has been brought in through my story so many ways. And now I think it's coming to life in very real ways. So creating a place out of ecodomes, which weirdly goes back to the 10-year thing from before 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And where people can come, where people can be, where they can learn, where they can eat good food, where they can feel comfortable, where they can explore their ideas, where they can get married, where I can do makeup for their weddings.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think that's where I'm heading, creating some sort of physical place where people can come and meet themselves and meet other people. Um, I have a real passion about bringing very different people together. And you see that in my work a lot, you know, helping artisans in very poor places meet people who want to buy things who would never otherwise be able to make a connection, helping refugees make new homes, you know. I am passionate about bringing different people together in a physical place and allowing them to have conversations.
Mm.
You kind of have a place like this, and I'm super jealous of it. um,
Is it?
so, so yeah, I think that's where I'm heading. I think I am starting down the path of wanting to have a place where people can be and exist and explore their crazy freaking dreams that they think are otherwise impossible. And I just want to cheer them on, right? Um, so yeah, that may be where we're headed in the next 10 years.
That's exciting. Well, since I've been in my Netflix just crash zone the last week, I just watched a show last night, a movie documentary called Biosphere 2. Have you followed? Have you watched it?
I watched part of it. I haven't finished it yet.
It was bizarre, and I loved it all at the same time, about eco domes and all that crazy community stuff. So anyway, that's what's been on my mind. Literally, that's what I did until midnight last night. So was
Yeah.
finished that show. So
I have a textbook I'm working my way through. You know, I'm looking up prices of barbed wire in my free time.
of course, right? On to the next thing.
No interest loans. You have my attention.
There you go. Cool. Well, what is, as we end here, what's one thing that folks in the Sullivan community can do to rally around the efforts that you've got going on now? Is there something that we can do to be really supportive to Brandi and all of her random projects?
Yeah, so with Remote Ramblers, really it is a place where I'm trying to help people travel and meet people. So this is another thing. I really want, when people go on vacations, I want them to meet the people. I want them to have real experiences. So right now it's kind of limited to Morocco, just because we're starting out. But yeah, with that, I'm highlighting really local places. So if you're traveling to Morocco, hit me up. I will plan you an amazing vacation with real people. But also just like trying to help people start loving themselves and pushing towards a life that they really love. So come talk to me. Like if you are here, come chat with me, because I want to be talking to you guys and I want to be yeah, I just want to be chatting. So hit me up on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you can find me. And I would love to encourage you.
But don't try to do an Instagram live with her because,
Yeah,
that
because
just
it's not
doesn't
gonna work.
work.
It's not gonna work.
Awesome. Well, definitely, if you haven't, go check out Remote Ramblers and all of Brandi's random projects that will probably splinter off from there that you'll see. So, Brandi, thank you so much for taking time for
Thanks for
navigating
having me.
the chaos of jumping on here together. So, I'm glad we made it work.
I am too. All right, Spud. Have a great afternoon.
Sounds good. See you, friend.
Bye.
All right, so that was Brandi with Remote Ramblers. Thank you again for navigating, bouncing from Instagram to Facebook, and then onto Zoom to Facebook. So glad we made it work. Go check out all of Brandi's work. And if you haven't, you can go to sullivanfdn.org. sullivan.com/webinar, and you will see all of the recorded videos that we've been doing for the last 2 months or so. So there's a whole database of conversations like this. If you want to not do Netflix, you can just go watch videos on the Sullivan page. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a good weekend ahead of you, and we will be back next week. See you, friends.